See, the problem that I've come to realize with scientific research as guys like you use them is that it relies on a lot of the times there are surveys, right? So a real good example was Alexander from DatePsych.
Yes.
I had him on my channel at one point, and we were talking about his research on top deal breakers in dating.
Yep.
And as we were going through women's deal breakers and men's deal breakers, I came to realize there's like 25 or 30 deal breakers that women would list when he surveyed them. But do you know what was missing that was obvious to me?
Oh, it's the behavior. I mean, right. I mean, I think I
It's
get what you're saying.
height. It's height because
Oh, they didn't say height. Oh,
none of the
that's so
women
funny.
in the survey acknowledged that height was important, but women disqualify men routinely on dating apps if they look short or if they aren't tall enough for them. So it's interesting, to get into the science and the research and say, this is science-based evidence on, good advice for dating and stuff like that. But when you ask somebody for their opinion or to take a survey or, however it's presented to them, like maybe you need a lie detector attached at the same time when you're asking them the question sort of thing. You know what I mean?
That's not even, so I can
like it can be flawed.
Yeah. So for me, survey data generally isn't good enough to believe something, right? Mm-hmm. So I'll give you a very similar example of this. So you have to, when I am assessing whether something's true, ideally, and sometimes the evidence just isn't there. Sometimes it's like, okay, we've got survey data and nothing else. So it's like, it's between survey data and like personal experience. And okay, maybe we need to do more research here. But when it's good, right? We get survey data, but we combine it with behavioral data and then also stuff that's kind of in between. So for example, with the height thing, right? You could look at what height filters do women set on dating apps, right? It's kind of in between. It's not quite behavioral. I guess you could say setting a filter is a behavior, but it is a self-report of their preference, but it's a self-report in a higher stakes context. So it's more persuasive. A good example of this would be if you ask people, and this is true for men and women, right? If you ask people, okay, what do you want in a mate? They're going to tell you, oh, I want someone honest. I want someone loyal. I want someone kind, right? Mm-hmm. And then they probably do want those things, right? Those are the top 3 and top 4 types of traits. Usually the top 5 are all these like personal qualities that are quite important. But if you look at behavioral data, looks come out over and over again, right? At close to the top of the list, if not the top. Yeah. Right, exactly. So it's like, yes, you say you want someone honest, loyal, and kind, but then when you actually go to select mates, what's the first thing you're looking at? You're looking at looks, and you're filtering based on that. Now, some would say, okay, that doesn't mean that looks are the most important thing. It's just the easiest thing to filter people based on. But I would say that when you look at especially another behavioral way of getting at this is to look at partner correlations, right? So for example, men say that they don't care that much about a woman's education level, right? So you talk about the self-report. So I just said a self-report example that would be, very red-pilled. Here's one that's, well, it kind of goes the other way sometimes, right? Men say they don't really care about a woman's education level. But then you look in practice and almost every college-educated man is only dating women who are also college educated, right?
Correct. Yeah.
The
I actually had a gal on my Ladies Night podcast the other night, and she's in the San Francisco Bay Area, and she was telling us that she was disqualified almost routinely sometimes by guys that were higher income earners because she didn't have a degree and didn't earn enough money.
Yes, exactly. So a lot of these red pill guys, right? They'll say, "Oh, it's not just survey data isn't real. Survey data isn't real." And it's like, okay, let's look at some behavioral data. Yeah, you guys are right. Looks matter a lot more than women say, right? But education, status, money, in practice, men say they don't care about these things when you ask them on a survey. But then in practice, men are dating roughly in their own income, especially in the West, right? And this really is Western data. Roughly in their own income range, right? Definitely in their own class range, if you were to stratify the sexes based on, normal variation in how the sexes earn. And then also definitely in their education range. We don't see these big mismatches. So yes, I completely agree with you.
It also depends on who you're going to ask to and where they're at in their stage of life. Like if you're talking to an older, more seasoned gentleman that's got his money sorted, he probably doesn't really care that much about her education and a degree on the wall, and more about youth and beauty, and potentially, if he wants a family and children, fertility, right? So these things all seem to be moving targets in my estimation. Is that something that you would agree with or disagree with?
I think you'd be surprised, mate. I believe it's true for you, right? And I
Hmm.
think that as when we're trying to be critical thinkers, right? We have to step outside of our own preferences and our own experience, right? Because I would have some biases based on there are times when I, open up a study and I'm like, well, I really care about this thing. And then I
Hmm.
realize, oh, it seems like actually overall, this isn't something that's super important to other men and vice versa.
Hmm.
I would say that most men who are educated, whether they say it or not, in their behavior, they exhibit a preference um, towards other educated individuals. And part of this, it might not come out as a direct effect. You have to keep in mind that it's like if you're, as you say, like a guy who's got his money together, educated, that sort of thing, you're probably a pretty smart guy, right? Just probably.
Hmm.
Very few people get rich by accident, right?
Yeah.
There's some people who get it through inheritance, that kind of thing. But usually it's like, okay, you've been solving complicated problems at a high level for decades, and that's why you have money. That type of guy in practice, in his speech, he might say, "Oh, I don't care about our education level. I don't care about how smart he is. Da 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 da. I just want someone young and beautiful." And then it's like in practice, you're on the second date and you're bored because you guys can't talk about anything. So I think a lot of these guys they say they don't care about it, but they do. We don't see huge IQ mismatches in dating typically. We don't
Hmm.
see huge salary gaps in dating typically. Although, this is when you're correcting for already the differences in wage gap, the differences in wages between the sexes. I apologize. And then also, we don't see these huge gaps in education. Generally, people mate quite assortively on that. Even though if it's going to go up in one direction,
Yeah.
it's generally the women dating up.
I really hope you guys enjoyed that clip. If you want to watch the full length podcast, you can find that over here, that clip's from. If you're newer to the channel, make sure you hit subscribe over here, and pin down below in the top comment, you'll find a bunch of useful links to my website, my supplement line, books, and a bunch of other stuff. Have an amazing day. Peace out.